How might your life have been different if there was a religion for you? A religion that honored you as a woman, as made equal in the image of God. Welcome to Heretica, her ecofeminist theology podcast. My name is Elena and I am an ecofeminist theologian. Please subscribe at theologyofher.substack.com. Mary Magdalene in the Gospel of John. What is unique to John's narrative is his tendency to individualize characters. Mary Magdalene is never presented in the company of other women. Unlike the previous three Gospels, she is not introduced to the reader, but evidently assumed to be known by name alone. As in Mark and Matthew, she makes her first appearance in the scene at the cross. The only information we get here is that she is standing under the cross together with a small group of men and women. John does not mention the presence of any women at Jesus' burial, so that the only other context where Mary Magdalene appears in John is at the tomb and in a resurrection appearance narrative. Exploring the appearances one at a time, we begin with Mary Magdalene at the cross. John specifies the place of the standing as near the cross. As to the persons who are present, John's list only has one person in common with the parallel Gospels lists, that of Mary Magdalene, but her name is listed last, not first, as in the three previous Gospels, when he states who were there standing near the cross before his death. Nothing is said about them, except that they were standing near the cross of Jesus. Moreover, neither Mary Magdalene nor any other of the women is described as a follower of Jesus. Mary Magdalene is present at the cross with a few of Jesus' family members and is mentioned as the disciple whom he loved. The very fact of being presented in the company of the family members and the beloved disciple under the cross illustrates Mary Magdalene's importance in the life of Jesus and the early community of his followers. Exploring now Mary Magdalene at the empty tomb. In John, as in the three Gospels, Mary Magdalene is involved in the discovery of the empty tomb on the first day of the week. The story begins with a description of how she goes to the tomb all by herself. Unlike the three previous Gospels, whereby all the women arrive together. John differs from the synoptics by not indicating any motivation for Mary's visit to the tomb. When she sees that the stone has been removed from the tomb, she does not enter the tomb as the women do in Mark or in Luke, nor does she meet an angel outside the tomb as in Matthew. In distinction from the three Gospels, Mary Magdalene immediately has an explanation for the stone that is removed, namely, they have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him. She will repeat this explanation of the evidence 2 more times, once to the angels and once to Jesus, whom she thinks to be the gardener. Exploring now Mary Magdalene and the risen Christ. Here, Mary Magdalene comes to the fore, described as standing near the tomb, and no longer at a distance from the events. She is described as weeping, standing outside the tomb. In John, the angels do not give Mary Magdalene a task, as in Mark and Matthew. After turning away from the empty tomb, Mary Magdalene sees someone standing behind her. It is Jesus who asks her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" But he immediately adds, "Whom are you looking for?" When he calls her by her name, Mary Magdalene, and not just woman, she recognizes him. Mary Magdalene responds, "Rabboni," which means rabbi or teacher. These observations suggest that Mary Magdalene is indirectly presented as a disciple when she calls Jesus Rabboni, and she moves towards him to touch him. But he stops her by saying in Greek, "Mimu aptu." The reason Jesus gives for his response is, because I have not yet ascended to the Father. The basic question is whether this implies that the prohibition has its basis in Jesus' present state or in the limitations of Mary Magdalene. Some claim that the not yet means that Jesus is in an in-between state in which he cannot be touched. They assume that by the time Jesus appears to the disciples, his body is transformed into the state of the resurrection and can now be touched. Others claim that Mary Magdalene needs to come to recognize Jesus as the Lord who is with the Father, and that only this recognition will enable her to enter into a new connectedness with him which transcends the earthly reality. So this was the end of the Gospel of John, and just a conclusion of all four Gospels. Mary Magdalene is portrayed in various ways across the four Gospels, as a follower, witness, caregiver, and one healed of demons, and receiving the first resurrection appearance. Despite differences, common elements persist. She was a prominent Galilean woman who traveled with Jesus, witnessed his crucifixion and burial, and visited his tomb after his death. Each Gospel presents a slightly different depiction of Mary Magdalene, and it is challenging to determine the historically accurate portrayal. Over time, women's roles in early Christianity seem to have diminished. So the Gospel of Mark might offer the most historical view, though this remains a debated point. Rather than reducing the diverse portrayals of Mary Magdalene to one, it is better to engage with the unique perspectives presented in the Gospels. Thank you so much for listening, and in the next few podcasts I will be sharing from the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. See you soon.
How might your life have been different if there was a religion for you? A religion that affirmed you as a woman, as equal to man, and made in the image of God. How might your life have been different? Heretica, her eco-feminist theology educational podcast.